We've trained our brain to see threats and dangers when they aren't there. And that's what keeps activating this wrong part of the brain. And you know when you're in that state, if you feel stress, worry, anxiety, frustration, anger, it's because that part of your brain doesn't know what to do. It doesn't know what your goals are. It doesn't know how to solve your problems. All it knows is how to react. All of that stuff that you want to manage your life, that's all in your creative brain, but you don't have access to that. Your brain has taken all of the energy from that part to direct it towards enabling you to run away or whatever you needed to do physically. We can see what the problem for most people is. They're trying to work out their life and solve their problems using a part of their brain that simply can't do it, and that's why they stay stuck.
This is A Joyful Rebellion, the podcast that explores that moment you realize the life and success you worked so hard to create didn't come with all the fulfillment you thought it would. I'm your host, James Walters, and I want you to be the author of your own story. Each week, I connect with people who inspire bold answers to the question, what do I do now to create a life I love? If you're ready to start answering that question for yourself, you're in the right place. So let's start a joyful rebellion. Every one of us has our own special brand of self-sabotage holding us back from having all the things we really want out of life. We've all heard the saying that everything you could ever wish for is on the other side of fear, and my guest today breaks down the fundamental truths of that statement, and most importantly, what us normal folks can do about it. Liam Naden is a great example of someone who has been through a joyful rebellion of his own. He spent the first half of his life working hard to achieve the success he'd always wanted, only to realize the life that accompanied all of that success actually made him miserable and stressed him out to the point where he lost everything but the clothes on his back. In the course of rebuilding his life, he began asking questions about why things happened for him the way they did. And this led him to some fascinating insights about how our brains are wired and how we can overcome what's holding us back from living our best life. Liam Naden, thank you so much for being here on A Joyful Rebellion.
Thanks very much for having me, James. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
You are a great example of someone who has gone through a joyful rebellion of their own in a major way, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But for anyone who is just listening, a joyful rebellion, what we're all about is that point in life where you've done all the things you thought you were supposed to do to reach a level of success you thought was going to bring you joy, make you happy. And you get there and you look around and you think to yourself, oh, I thought this would be different, and I'm not as fulfilled as I thought I would be getting all of this success. And the rebellion part is when you have to make the decision, okay, what do I do next? How do I do things differently to get where I really want to be? And you've done that in a major way, and it left you with some profound insights. And that's what I really want to talk about today, because you went through a significant joyful rebellion in your life, and it led you to an understanding that most of us use our brains in the wrong way. That's understandable because, like babies, brains don't come with instructions. But can you tell us the story of what brought you to this epiphany?
Well, it happened a number of years ago, because you're exactly right in terms of that feeling of, is this all there is? This sort of, disillusionment. But for me, it was even more dramatic than that, because I've been the sort of person all my life who really is out there trying to be successful. I was very driven. How can I have the best life possible? I want to be rich. I want to be successful. And so I went into my own business, and I've had 18 different businesses in my life. So I've always been an entrepreneur, and I've always been a real student of success. I used to go to huge numbers of seminars, workshops, took courses, read books on everything from self-help, personal development, spirituality, religion, psychology. And I had a great library of all of this stuff, and I knew everything about setting goals and how to achieve them, and how to use your mind differently, and how to reprogram your beliefs, and how to be motivated, all of these things. But interestingly enough, I came to a point, and it was a few years ago now, but I remember this moment so clearly, because I was just putting the finishing touches on building my dream home. It was everything I wanted it to be. I helped design it and all those things. And it even had a music room, and I'd been a musician through my university days. And one of my dreams was build my own dream house and have my own music room. So here I was. I walked into the music room on this day and I sat down and I looked out the windows. We had a stunning view through these big windows. The sun was shining and we had mountains in the background. I remember thinking, I've made it. This is my dream. I have reached all of my goals that I've set for myself. Here I am, a millionaire. I've got, I think, 2 businesses that I own. I've just built my dream house. I've got my own music room. And I thought I should be feeling, yes, I've made it. I'm so satisfied and grateful and happy with my life because everything I thought I wanted, I had. But actually it was the opposite. I felt absolutely unbelievably low. I was feeling so stressed I was almost shaking. And I just had a blazing row with my wife at the time, which didn't help. But I remember thinking, I have so much pressure on me. I have so much stress. I have all of these problems in my life that are stopping me from enjoying really creating my dream life. Anybody else in this situation would feel really excited, really happy and feeling like I finally made it. But I didn't feel like that. I felt so bad and so many pressures I felt on me and so empty and hollow. And I said to myself, this isn't worth it. I've really messed up here because I didn't think this is what it would be like. Really, maybe what I should do is start all over again. Maybe I should just get rid of everything because then maybe it would give me the chance to get my soul back. Because that's what it felt like. It felt like all my life force energy was just being drained out of me, no matter what I had on the outside. It's a funny thing they say, you should be careful what you think about or what you wish for, because it was literally within 2 months that I did lose absolutely everything. Lost everything I had, became homeless. The house went with the music room, the marriage went, or the businesses went, all my money, and I was literally left with the clothes on my back. And I had to move back in with my elderly mother. And I wasn't a young guy. It wasn't like I'd just built up a little bit over a couple of years and I'd lost it. Oh, well, you can start again. I was in my mid-40s. I'd spent a lifetime really working hard to build all this up. And I had to move from a wonderful big house to sleeping on the sofa in the living room of my elderly mother's small apartment. And when I said, well, I was prepared to lose everything, I don't think I really realized what losing everything means, because it's not just your stuff. It's that feeling inside of hopelessness that like the whole of your life has been a waste and you haven't managed to achieve anything. And I remember as I was lying there trying to get to sleep on the very uncomfortable sofa, a couple of questions kept coming up in my mind. And the first one was, why has this happened to me? Because, as I said earlier, I was a student of success. I could tell you or anybody anything about how to be successful. You need to have your goals. You need to be a positive thinker. These are all the things. I had all my goals written out in great detail. I had all my plans, but this wasn't on my goals list, to lose everything. So I kept thinking, why has this happened to me? It's not like I've done anything wrong. It's not like I've defrauded anybody or been dishonest. And the second question that kept coming up in my mind was, so what do I do now? And both of those questions I had no answer for. No matter how much I tried to think and figure out and analyze and even talk to other people about it, I couldn't figure out why it had happened and what to do next. So what I actually did, I discovered much later the science behind what I did. But what I did was, I did something I would probably never have done if I'd been in any other situation. If I'd had any hope at all, if I'd had anything going on in my life other than complete confusion and despair, what I did was I literally gave up. I said to myself, I give up. I don't care anymore. I'm not going to try and figure out what to do because I'm exhausted mentally. I've tried to figure out what to do. I'm not going to try and plan anything. I'm not going to go out and looking for opportunities. I'm not going to look for ways to get myself out of the situation. I just give up. Well, something very weird happened from that moment, because pretty soon a business showed up unexpectedly. Then a relationship showed up, a great relationship, not like the ones I'd had earlier, which I wasn't very good at. And then another business showed up, and all of these things started to show up, and it wasn't very long before I was starting to do some amazing things. Like I spent 8 years sailing around Europe in my own yacht, managing my businesses from anywhere. And I was doing all these great things, and I remember waking up one day, I think it was in the Greek islands, and can you imagine being in a bay, you're on your own yacht, you're the only one there, you get up and it's beautiful sunny, you've had a really nice sleep and it's warm and sunny, and you just slip off the back of the boat, and then you get back in, and you've got two businesses that are just working really well. And I remember getting out of the water this particular morning and just thinking, I feel it now. This is what I've been looking for. You know, sometimes you just know something. It's beyond emotion almost. It's just this feeling. Yes, this is what my life is about. I've found that satisfaction or that deep joy and sense of purpose, because here was my life completely different. And I had no problems and stress in the sense that I didn't have all these pressures dragging me down. Things were working really well in my life. And I thought to myself, well, that created another problem, or the only problem, which is confusion, because then I thought, why has this happened to me? Why is it that I spent all of those years studying everything I could about success, every technique, every method, every idea that I could on how to be successful, and I really worked hard, and I set my goals, and I had plans, and I took every opportunity I could to be better, to do more, to have more, and to really keep pushing myself along. Why is it that when I did all that, everything just fell apart? And now I'm not setting any goals. I don't have any plans. I don't have any expectations. I'm working, but hey, you know, I'm also on my yacht sailing around, so it's not exactly a struggle. I'm actually really enjoying my life. So I thought, what's the difference? Where were the goals? I just couldn't figure out what was going on. So that's when I decided I'm going to figure out what I am doing differently, because I have the experience of what it feels like. So I am actually doing something differently. It's not just something I've read in a book that sounds like a good idea. I actually have not only the feeling, but the results of what this different way to live actually is. So I thought I need to figure out, get some idea of what I'm doing differently, because I want to make sure I keep doing it. I don't want to mess this up. And that's what I did. And it really took me down in a different area of understanding how we get the results we do in our life. And from that, that's what I teach now. It's what I've been able to continue to do in my own life and help others to do. And it comes from really looking at your life in a completely different way, certainly a different way to what any of the teachers and gurus that I'd listened to had mentioned. And yeah, that's me now.
That's a dramatic turnaround. And it sounds like it wouldn't be a bad thing to go off the back of the yacht any given Tuesday and jump into Greek waters there. You mentioned something about the books, all the self-improvement, the personal growth that you had studied in the years leading up to right before you lost everything. And you mentioned the word goals a lot. And that's something that I noticed in your information and on your website, is that you talk about why setting goals is unnatural and it sabotages success. A lot of people are listening to that and they would hear it and think, oh my gosh, I mean, setting goals is what we've always been told to do. It's what the top however many % of successful people get where they are. But you learned something different after you studied what you'd been doing to give you the life that you really wanted. And so what did you learn about goal setting and how it sabotages our plans?
Well, I should say that the thing about goal setting, it is a controversial statement. And if anyone's listening or watching and thinking this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and I'm going to switch off right now, maybe I could just encourage you to stick around, because what I'm going to share with you, everything I want to share is provable by science. It's also provable in the teaching of every spiritual and religious tradition throughout history. This was the thing for me, that I'd heard all these ideas about what worked, but there was no proof. Literally, you went to a guru and he was rich, he was successful, and he told you what to do, and you thought, well, he must know, it must work because it's working for him. But it didn't work for me. All of those things that I tried, they didn't really work. And the thing about goal setting, if people are listening and saying, but you're supposed to set goals, how else do you do it? Just have a think about this. And it's a question I always ask clients and people that I work with early on when we start working, which is, what percentage of the goals that you have set have you ever achieved? And I say, is it 100%? Have you achieved every goal that you've ever set for yourself? And they say, no. Well, is it 90%? No. Is it 80%? 50%? Am I getting warm? No, you're not getting warm.
No.
They accepted, and this isn't just me, other people have talked about this, when you start looking into this, because everything I'm going to share with you as well today is about digging a little bit deeper beyond just these things that we think sound good and that we've been told. But the success rate overall for goal setting is between 2 and 3%. In other words, only 2 to 3% of all of the goals that people set are ever achieved. And this has been, been studies done on this. So why is it? And if you really think about your life, what we're all out there doing is most people are going, well, I've got my goals and I'm going to achieve them. I'm not achieving, but everybody else is achieving their goals. It's just me, and I need to work harder, and I'm making progress towards them. But you're not achieving them, are you? You're not achieving many of the things that you set for yourself. So why are we all doing something that only has a 2 to 3% success rate and telling ourselves that it's the way to do things? And what I'm going to show, or hope to explain, is that it's not natural to set goals, and that's why we don't ever achieve them. That's why it has such a low success rate. And even of the goals that we do set, for most people, it's like you do get to that place of, well, is this all there is? It wasn't quite what I expected. It wasn't quite what I wanted. So we could get into a bit more detail about goal setting, because I think there's another step of understanding as to why goal setting doesn't work. And it all comes down to the one thing that I'd completely overlooked when I was out there studying success and trying to figure out how to make my life as good as I could. I'd forgotten the basic thing, which is we live in this biological, natural world. And there are laws about how nature works, that if we work with them, we actually thrive. But if we work against them, we struggle. Nature rules everything. I often use the analogy that perhaps you're standing on a 10-story building and you have this goal to go up in the air when you jump off. And you can visualize, you can meditate, you can pray, you can read all of these sorts of books on how to change your subconscious mind and how to change your beliefs and motivate it and all of these things. But you walk off that building, you're going to fall straight down without any further thought. It's because gravity is going to take over. Gravity doesn't care what you think or what you think you're doing with yourself. You can't go against the law of nature. So nature rules, and nature has rules. And one of the rules that governs our life overwhelmingly is the law of biology, how we're set up biologically, how we survive and why we survive in this physical world. We can't get away from it. Try and stop your heart beating, or stop breathing, or try and stop any of the gazillion things that are happening in your body in every moment. You can't do it. That's what's controlling your life. And nature actually has a law of success, of how success works. And when I started to look at this, I studied the writings of a lot of biological scientists, and it also ties in with religion. But if you were to ask any biological scientist who studies life and say to him, what's the purpose of life? How does life work? How is life organized? How is life designed? They all have the same answer. The primary purpose, the goal, if you like, of all of life is to survive. That is what everything is wired to do. Primarily, above all else, is to survive. And what gives something the best chance for survival? Everything is designed to give itself the best chance for survival. That's what we call thriving. In other words, every living organism has the best chance for survival when it is its best. Science even has a word for this, which is called homeostasis, which means the optimum functioning of the organism. So all of nature is designed to ensure that every living thing is functioning optimally so that it has the greatest chance for survival. Now, for humans, we have the same biology, exactly the same. We have hearts that beat like every other animal. So we're also designed to be in this state of optimum functioning. And for us, optimum functioning doesn't just mean being healthy physically, so we can fight off disease or injury or threats or whatever. It also means being our best emotionally and mentally. And when you think about it, when you are your best emotionally and mentally, in other words, when you're happy, when you're not bogged down with problems, when you're feeling great, grateful, loving, what are you? You are feeling your best, and you are your most productive, your most creative. So we are actually designed to be in that state. The whole of nature is designed to be in homeostasis all of the time, pretty much. But it turns out we're the only ones who aren't, because if you say to most people, do you feel like you're being the best that you can be, functioning at your most creative, productive, without stress and problems in your life, which only are going to pull you down? Most people would say, you're crazy, that's impossible. But the crazy thing is, it's not only not impossible, it's how we're designed to be. We are designed to live in this state because the rest of nature does. This was a big wake-up because nobody had ever talked to me about this natural biology stuff. And then I thought, so how does nature do this? How does nature make sure that every living thing achieves this optimum state, this homeostasis? And it turns out nature has the answer. And it provides every living organism with a mechanism, a machine, whose sole job is to make that happen. And that, of course, is a brain. You know, a brain, all it is, we think, oh, the brain is just something that keeps you surviving, you know, keeps your heart beating and all the stuff happening and gives you a few thoughts from time to time. Your brain isn't just designed to make you survive. It's designed to make you have the greatest chance for survival, which means it's designed to put you and keep you in this optimum state, this state of homeostasis. And when I really thought about this, I thought that's so true, because I feel, going back to being on, what's the difference between being on the back of a yacht and just feeling great and everything's working well in my life, and being in a state of total stress where nothing's working in my life? It's a feeling, it's a knowing. And that feeling and knowing, that inner state, is literally reflected, without getting into anything woo-woo, but it's literally how you run your life. So what we need to understand is, what is that homeostasis and how do we create it? Because that's what we're supposed to do. That's the way we're supposed to live.
Wow. Like you said, nature, you can look at that and see how it works. It is scientific, and no amount of hoping, wishing, manifesting, any of the, like you said, not that that's all woo-woo, but none of the things that you maybe could do to try to develop your own personal growth and self-improvement is going to change the laws of nature. It sounds like you're saying that so many of us are trying to force nature to bend to our will instead of us just floating along with nature the way we're supposed to. We'd have a much easier time.
It simply comes down to understanding that your brain is a biological machine whose sole purpose and the way it functions is designed to put you in homeostasis, optimum functioning, so that you thrive and have the greatest chance for survival. And a way to think about this is, think of any other machine, say perhaps a motor car. Now, we all know what a motor car is and what it's designed to do. It's a machine with one purpose, which is to get you from where you are to where you want to go. And it's going to do that in a predictable, reliable, certain way, and it's going to be an enjoyable ride for you. So you don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about whether it's going to do it. You don't get out every 5 seconds and check the engine and that the wheels haven't fallen off. You just know that if it does its job, it's going to do what it's supposed to do. However, what would be the only situation where a motor car wouldn't work properly? That would be if you didn't know how to drive it. So if you got into a motor car, or worse still, you didn't even get in, maybe you thought, well, I have no clue on how to drive this machine. I've heard this is what it's supposed to do, that it's supposed to take me on a journey over there, but I don't know how it works, but I see it's got wheels. Perhaps the way to make it work is to get out from behind and push. So you stand behind and you give it all your energy and it doesn't move. And what happens? You get stressed and exhausted. Then you say to yourself, if you didn't know how it worked, you'd say, I'm the problem. I'm not strong enough. I'm not motivated enough. I'm not determined enough. I need to work on building up my muscles and maybe getting a new pair of high traction shoes or something. And I need to develop a new technique on how to push this car harder so that it gets there. Now, it sounds crazy. And then someone comes along who, because we know how a car works, we'd be the person coming along and say, why are you doing it like that? Why are you making it so difficult? You're supposed to just get in and enjoy the ride and manage the experience. And obviously the only problem you have is you don't understand how to drive it. You're not using it the right way. And it's exactly the same, it turns out, when I started to study this. The brain has this mechanism to ensure that we stay in this homeostasis, but we've been taught all the wrong stuff about how to use it, including setting goals. And we can come back to that again about why that is biologically, doesn't make any sense, if you like. It's not in harmony with nature. So if you think in a car, if you drive it the wrong way, the only result you're going to get is you're going to be frustrated, tired, not get the results you want, and end up with problems, maybe in yourself because you wear yourself out, or in the car itself. You know, the engine blows up because you put the wrong fuel in, or you burn out the brakes, or whatever it is. And it turns out this is so simple and so basic. And when I started to figure this out, I thought, this is so liberating an idea because it is so natural and simple. It's not about spending 10 years on a mountaintop trying to figure out what to do. You just need to understand how the brain works. And I've created a 4-part brain model, which has nothing to do with the mind and the subconscious and all those sort of concepts, if you like. There are 4 physical locations, 4 functional parts of your brain that all do something different. And when you understand what their job is, and how you activate each of those parts in the right sequence, it's like driving a car. You just enjoy the ride. and look out at what's happening in your life and see amazing things. It really is as simple as that.
That is fascinating. And you do talk a lot about the four parts of the brain and how they work together to give us the results that we want in our life. Can you expand on that and give kind of, I guess, the overview for folks listening if they're thinking, okay, maybe I have been pushing the car, if we're using the car as an example of the way we work our brains, and the different parts of the brain certainly do different things. Anyone who's gone through or read any of the self-help, they know about the fight or flight part of the brain. They know about the part of the brain that's more rational and how they sort of trick each other sometimes. The part of the brain that was applicable 10,000 years ago that's no longer really applicable now, that we don't tend to, in most places, have animals trying to kill us every day. So we don't need certain parts of the brain as much as we did thousands of years ago. But give us an overview of the four parts of the brain and what you learned about how they work together to get better results for us.
Well, the main thing to understand is you essentially have two brain states. One brain state, when it's activated, is your natural state. It's the state that when you're in that, your brain does everything to ensure that you stay in homeostasis. And I call this the master part of the brain because it's the part of the brain that's designed to run your life. But here's the thing. It's also what I call the creative brain. And this is located right in the very center of our skull. It's primarily in the pineal gland, but also other parts in that region. But what your master creative brain is designed to do, as I said, is to ensure that everything happens in your life to ensure that you're in this state of optimum functioning. So it handles or it generates such things as the word suggests, creativity, your imagination, your intuition. This is the part of your brain that generates those gut feelings where you get that little voice inside that's come from nowhere and says you shouldn't do that or you should do that. Now, often we just shut that down and we say, oh, no, I'm going to do it anyway. But that's where your intuition comes from. It's where your awareness comes from. It's where your motivation, and as I said, all your creativity, all of your expanded performance comes from. And it's also where your problem-solving ability is. Because here's the thing, how many times have you struggled away trying to figure out a problem? You know, you've got this problem in your life and you get all the books out and you go on YouTube and try and get some more information and you try to come up with a technique to come up with a solution, or you go and ask other people for their advice or help and you still can't figure it out. And then all of a sudden you're doing something completely different and you get this idea and you go, that's the answer to the problem. Why didn't I think of that before? Very good question. Why didn't you think of it before? And the reason was you weren't using your creative brain to try and solve the problem. So in this particular state, it's called homeostasis. Some spiritual traditions call this enlightenment as well. There's lots of words that have been used to describe this state. Athletes and peak performers, and we've probably all had that experience of everything flowing well in our life, if not for very long. But, you know, things are going well, we're making right decisions, and we say everything's just falling into place. We say these things. That experience, it's also called being in the flow, being in the zone. And, you know, musicians, artists, creative people, even athletes have all talked about the state that they enter where they're putting an effort, but it's something else that seems to be inspiring them or taking control. It's really interesting looking at songwriters on YouTube being interviewed, and they're often asked, where'd you get the idea for that song? And their answer is always the same. You know, the answer is, I don't know. It just came to me. I don't know where it came from. It's just like, bang, there it was. This is all this creative brain at work. It brings you the right ideas at the right time. It enables you to see opportunities where otherwise you wouldn't have seen them. So that's our natural state. But there's something else that gets in the way of that, that stops that working. And you mentioned it earlier when you talked about the fight or flight. But we have another part of our brain, which I call the survival brain, which includes the fight or flight. And when that's activated, it shuts down the creative brain. So basically, the way you're biologically designed, and you know, nature's spent millions of years figuring out this is the best way to live. The way you're designed is to live in homeostasis all of the time, except when you're faced with a threat to your physical safety, to your survival. And what the brain does then, it sends down, because your brain is constantly monitoring through another part of your brain, your emotional brain, actually. It's a bit more complicated to explain how it does that. But this is all scientific. This has nothing to do with, thoughts or subconscious or anything like this. This is biology. So your brain's always looking out to evaluate your environment and say, is it safe or is there a threat? And if it's safe, it activates your creative brain. If it says it's not safe, it shuts that part of your brain down and it activates the fear response. And it comes not just in fear, but it might be anxiety, stress, worry. That's all a sign from your brain telling you that it thinks there's a threat to your survival. And as you said, millions of years ago, it was very useful with the lions behind every rock. We needed to develop this mechanism to protect ourselves. We needed firstly to be able to recognize that there was a threat there, and then something needed to kick into our brain far quicker than thinking or working it out or rationalize anything, just to react to get rid of that danger. So that's how we developed this state. But that's all it's there for. It's only there to be activated when you are faced with a threat or a danger. But what we've done through our entire life, through all of these false beliefs and ideas and experiences, is we've trained our brain to see threats and dangers when they aren't there. And that's what keeps activating this wrong part of the brain. And what happens when we're in this state, and you know when you're in that state, if you feel stress, worry, anxiety, frustration, anger, because what happens when you're in that state? What do we say? I'm so confused. I don't know what to do. I can't think straight. That's a sign that you're in this state. And that should be a clue that if you can't think straight, if you don't know what to do, it's because that part of your brain doesn't know what to do. It doesn't know what your goals are. It doesn't know how to solve your problems. All it knows is how to react. All of that stuff that you want to manage your life, to keep you in this perfect state, that's all in your creative brain, but you don't have access to that. Your brain has taken all of the energy from that part to direct it towards getting rid of the lion, enabling you to run away or whatever you needed to do physically. We can see what the problem for most people is. They're trying to work out their life and solve their problems using a part of their brain that they simply can't do it, and that's why they stay stuck. And in my life, when I was so stressed and always dealing with problems and trying to figure stuff out and trying to set bigger goals and trying, I was in a state of stress, worry, anxiety. And I thought, well, if I solve this problem, then I'll get out of that state of stress or worry. What I didn't realize is you've got to get out of the state first, and then you can solve the problem. And not only solve the problem, but then you're going to see what you should really be doing with your life. And you're not only going to see what you should really be doing with your life, your brain's going to make sure you do everything to make it happen. And that brings us a little bit back to this goal-setting idea. Because why is it that goal-setting doesn't work? Well, if you think about nature and biology, one of the other things that the way nature works, the way your brain works, the way you work, the way everything works, is what I call the law of most efficiency. In other words, everything is designed to give the maximum amount of energy output for the minimum amount of energy that you consume. In other words, we're really efficient. And if you think about it, millions of years ago, we mightn't have been able to eat for a week. So our body had to find a way to conserve as much energy as possible so that we could survive a week and also go out and hunt or chase the animal a week later when we had the energy to do that. And nature, again, has spent millions of years figuring out the best way and the most efficient way to get anything done, to get an animal or an organism into homeostasis. It's figured out the most efficient way. Because again, another law of nature is the law of least resistance. The less resistance, the better something works, the faster you get to something. So when you think about a goal, imagine if your creative brain, this part of your brain, and we're not talking about the thinking brain, because remember all of these inspirations, ideas, problem solving, things working well in your right, they don't come from your thoughts. This is a different part of your brain entirely. But imagine if you were able, somehow your creative brain told you what your ultimate goal was. What was best for you? What would really make you be in this homeostasis? You be the best that you could be. When I was sleeping on my mother's sofa, if my creative brain suddenly gave me this idea, Liam, what you really need and what's going to make you the happiest and the best you can be is to travel around the world on your own yacht with this wonderful person that you have a relationship with and have 2 businesses, and then you're going to learn all about how the brain works and how people really achieve the results they do in their life. And then you're going to share it with your books and courses and coaching and with audiences all around the world. Now, if my brain had said that, I would have looked and said, That's absolutely insane. And for two reasons. The first one, I didn't know that I could achieve that. I'd be like, what, sailing on my yacht for 8 years? 8 years? That's a lifetime. I wouldn't have thought that I could do it. But the second thing is, I wouldn't have even known that's what I wanted, because I would have thought, it's never occurred to me that it was never on any goals list to sail around the world on a yacht. And what would I have done if my brain said, but that is what you're supposed to have for you to be your best? I would have doubted it. I would have questioned it. I would have tried to analyze it. Maybe I would have gone and read some books and sat down and thought, no, I need to think about this. I don't know. Is that biologically efficient? You're wasting all that time. You're not doing anything. You're not moving in the direction of getting there. So that's why your brain doesn't show you a goal. And then you can think, well, the other thing you might think I should say is, okay, so maybe your brain should give you a plan on what to do. So imagine your brain says, okay, Liam, I'm just going to show you the next 20 things you need to do in your life to get to where you need to be. So you get this written out plan of the 20 next steps. What do you do then? If you're like me, you go, oh, that's interesting. But step number 3, I'm not sure if I know how to do that, or I don't know how that works. So would it really lead to step number 4? Hang on, before I start, I think I'm just going to go and get some more information and really understand all of this, because I'm a little bit unsure, a bit afraid. Again, you're not acting biologically efficiently. You're not using the least amount of energy to get to where you're supposed to be. So what is the most efficient way? It's obvious, isn't it? You just take the next step. Your creative brain, when you're in homeostasis, when you use your brain effectively, you are always shown the next step. Nothing more, the very next step. And when you do that, it'll show you the next step. And when you do that, show you the next step. I know this sounds so simple, but it really, when you think about it, it makes such sense that that would be the most efficient way science, nature has worked out for you to achieve your optimum state. And it's really interesting. I've talked to several very successful people about this, and a person I got to know, he's retired now, but he had a business. He had 1 million customers in 85 countries. He had 500 staff. He had 2 private jets. And I said to him, how did you manage to put all that together? How did you manage to create such a great business? And he said, I don't know. I don't know how it happened. It wasn't on a goals list. If I put it on a goals list, I would never have thought this, but I just did it. And it just all fell into place. We had some great discussions about this, and I've had discussions with other people too who explain that the success they've had has come from exactly the same thing. They don't know how they put it together. Sometimes people write a book and try and explain how they think they put it together, but that's a different limited part of their brain. It's not really the way they put it together. They think, well, maybe I had some goals, or maybe I did this. They're trying to figure it out. But if they're really honest, they say, like I said, and still say, I don't know how I did it. It just happens. This is your creative brain at work. This is the way we're naturally designed. We're not designed to try and figure out and struggle. We're designed to do what we're supposed to do in the moment to lead us and keep us in this homeostasis state. And that's when you solve problems and do the right things, and it all works out.
A lot of people have a struggle with getting to a place where they can trust and start to listen to that part of their brain and take that next step. Is that the part where fear comes in and they get in their own way?
Well, absolutely, because, we have this thing about trust, and you have to let go and allow and believe. The problem is none of that works either. The only thing that works is you believe something when you know that that's the way it works. So you believe that your heart's going to keep beating, or that you're going to keep breathing, or the sun's going to come up in the morning. You believe that when you're driving down the road, all of the cars on the other side are not going to hit you. They're going to stay on their side. Why do you believe that? You believe it because you have an experience of it. You just know, yes, that is the way it works. You don't need to convince me. I don't need to have this idea of trying something and hoping it works. So it's the same with why we don't use our brain the right way. The main thing is we don't understand this is how it works, because I don't know about you, but most of the people I share this with, and it was certainly for me, I had no clue about any of this stuff. Nobody had told me about this in natural biology, but yet it all made such total sense when I started to look into it. So a lot of it is just understanding that this is how it works. I mean, if someone tells you how a motor car works, you go, oh, well, that makes sense. It's not about pushing it from behind. Oh, I see what you mean. I see why you would turn the key on and you'd press that lever and not that one. Makes total sense. And then all you need to do is practice and make it into a habit. Sometimes that means undoing a lot of bad habits, old habits, like, you're still tempted to push the car because when you first start trying to drive it, it's a bit stuttery and you're not doing it very well. So you want to think, maybe it's easier to push it from behind. So a lot of it's just practice. But the only thing you really need to do, and again, this is so simple, is to understand what's causing you to be in either of those brain states. What's causing you to stay stuck when you feel fear, stress, worry, anxiety, and what's causing you to activate your creative brain. And what it is it's triggers. There are things in your environment that are triggering these feelings of fear, stress, worry, and anxiety that are pushing you into using your survival brain. So all you need to do, you don't need to study stuff, you don't need to come up with some new meditation technique. All you need to do is identify what the triggers are in your life. They can be external and they're internal. What are the triggers that are making you feel fear, stress, worry, and anxiety? Because whenever you feel that, as I say, you're putting yourself in the wrong brain state, in a state that will only keep you stuck, will never get you to where you want to be. But if you eliminate the triggers, you're not going to feel that, and you're going to keep your creative brain functioning and active and guiding your life. And the more you do this, the more you see things show up in your life, and you say, wow, how did that happen? Was that a coincidence? Well, that was lucky, wasn't it? But you realize that's how your brain is designed to work, not to bring you things that you think you know or think you should have or expect to have, but the things that are right for you. One of the things I say to people is, think of one of the most significant things that happened to you in your life, which was probably meeting the person that you married and had a family with. Now, when you met that person, if you think the day before, did you plan to meet that person that day? You might have said, well, one day I'd like to meet somebody, but did you sit down and say, tomorrow I'm going to meet this person, this is what they're going to look like, and this is their characteristics, and we're going to have this many children, and this is what they're going to be like, and this is the life we're going to lead? As the song says, life's what happens when we're busy making other plans. So all of the stuff that's significant in your life, if you're really honest, most of it, if not all of it, is not the result of really setting goals. It's unexpected stuff. It's where did that person come from? Where did that opportunity come from? How I met that person or whatever it is. And when we realize that, that's a clue, surely, that there is something else going on. It's your creative brain. It's the part of you that knows more than you think you do about what you need to have. You need to do the work, but it's going to show you every step of the way what you really need to do. And we don't trust because we don't believe that this is the way it works. We think, oh, I need to be in more control of my life. I need to know what's going to happen. And that all comes from fear. We're afraid. But that's a bit like getting into a motor car and being petrified and not willing to put your foot on the accelerator because you're scared of what's going to happen. You know it's not going to get you into any trouble. It's going to do everything that's designed to do to give you best ride possible.
So what would be your advice for someone who's in their car right now, they're listening to this and they're thinking, yeah, I've got stress. I definitely have got bills. I got the kids. I've got to make sure, 50 different things line up before 6 p.m. this evening. And they are not able to access that creative side of their brain to help them, I guess, solve those things that they see as problems. What would be the first step for someone like that?
Well, if you're driving in your car, pull over, pull out your phone and send an email to course@liamnaden, just my name, course@liamnaden.com. And I will send you instant access to a free mini course I've put together on how to unlock your rapid solution brain. Because there are techniques that all science and all of religion have, well, actually religion has been teaching this particular technique for thousands of years on how you can start to find solutions to your problems rather than staying stuck. It comes simply down to using your brain in a different way. So I've put together this mini course, it's free, and it really explains in a simple way not only how to do it, but you get an experience of actually doing it so you can see the result in your life. Because that's the other thing you need. You need some proof, And when you try this and you see something happen, you go, whoa, how did that happen? And you start to make a connection between how you're using your brain and the results you're getting in your life that aren't coming from your struggle and trying to force it to happen and trying to be in control, but you allow this other part of your brain in control. But if people are still listening and if they haven't crashed their car when they've pulled over, it's course@liamnaden, just my name, course@liamnaden.com. And that will give you a lot more detail and give you an exercise, a technique. Because here's the thing, continuing a little bit about understanding, what we have to realize and remember is that it's the triggers that activate our survival brain and stop us from accessing the part of our brain that is trying to keep us in homeostasis. So it's what keeps us stuck. And it's the trigger, if you like, is your brain making you feel fear. So when you feel fear, stress, worry, and anxiety, frustration, that's a sign that your brain has somehow put you in that state for some reason. Something has triggered you. But another really interesting connection I found about this was, where have I heard this before about fear is the enemy? Fear is what stops you. Fear is what blocks you from being your best self, from using your creative brain. I thought, I've heard it in the Bible. And in fact, it says in the Bible 365 times, someone's actually counted, it says, be not afraid. Those 3 words, be not afraid. Now we all think, oh, that's just a nice idea and somebody trying to make us feel better. This is a biological instruction. You know, the Bible is a great manual on how to use your brain the right way. It's an instruction because it's telling you that when you feel fear, stress, worry, anxiety, unless there's a lion about to eat you, and all right, you can feel fear then because you need it. That's what it's for.
Permission granted.
That's the purpose of fear, is to protect you from those things. But when you feel that, all of the stuff that God, infinite intelligence, biology, whatever you like to call it, all of the resources that it wants to give you to ensure that you live your best life, you're blocking them. You're not able to use them properly. It's a bit like God giving you a motor car and giving the manual on how to drive it. But if you don't drive it the right way, you can't blame God for not getting anywhere and for being, can't say, oh, God gave me a rubbish car that doesn't work. You're not working. You're not reading the manual. And, again, it says in the Bible, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will take care of itself. It says somewhere else, do not worry about what you shall eat, drink, and wear. They'll all be provided for you. Just as they're provided for every other living thing, the birds, it's all provided for them. Now, it doesn't say sit down, write a goal of what you want and work really hard to earn what you shall eat, drink, and wear, to earn everything you need. It doesn't say that. It says it will be given to you. And that's the free state, this optimum functioning state. It's not about struggling to get something. It's about accepting what comes along and creatively and with all of your energy and renewed energy, you live a creative, productive life. You use that to produce even more, which of course helps not only your survival, but the survival of the rest of the species as well when you're more productive and creative. So we need to get out of this idea that we're supposed to struggle for stuff, that life is hard, that everyone's got problems, that you have to work for things, that problems are good for you. None of those things are true. They don't make any biological sense. You could say, from a natural perspective, how could problems be good for you? They don't help you last longer. They do the opposite. They make you stressed, and that, shortens your life, and they make you do stupid things. I mean, how many times we do all these crazy, impulsive things? I do a lot of marriage coaching. People say to me, they come for help and say, look, all I do is argue with my wife. And even when I'm arguing, I'm thinking, why am I arguing? It's not helping. It only makes things worse. And I say something hurtful. And I think, why did I say that? That was so stupid. Even when I'm saying it, I knew I shouldn't have said it. It's because you're using this part of your brain that is impulsively just making you do all the wrong things, lash out. So it doesn't matter how hard you try, and people go away and say, I'm not going to argue again. It never works that way.
Yeah.
Because your brain is programmed for you to argue. It's programmed for you to lash out and fight if you're using that part of your brain. But when you're in your creative state, you can look at things more sensibly, and you can do things that don't carry on the argument.
That's a great example, because as you're talking, I'm just reflecting back on a lot of the conversations that I have with people on this podcast. It comes down to awareness and getting where you want to be, the feeling of life that you want to have. It comes down to awareness of the things that are taking that away from you. And you mentioned triggers a few times, and it sounds like, and tell me if I'm right on this, but if we can become more aware of the things that trigger us into using that part of our brain that essentially shuts off our creativity, our creative problem solving abilities, if we don't have access to that, if we can just be aware of our triggers and point at them and say, oh, that just triggered me into potentially using this part of my brain that's not going to be really useful, then we take the power away from that trigger. And the more we can point at it and identify it and call it out by name, maybe we can eventually create the habit of taking the power away from those triggers to where they don't even phase us anymore. Am I getting warm on that?
Well, it's even better than that.
Okay.
It's not even just being aware of your triggers, it's actually eliminating them. You actually have the total power and control to eliminate every trigger in your life that is putting you in the wrong brain state. And the way to know that is what makes you feel bad. What makes you feel worried, stress, anxiety? And you can eliminate those things from your life. Now, some of them are bigger than others. Small things might be stop watching the news. Switch it off. I haven't watched the mainstream news for 15 years, and that's when my life started to turn around. You don't need to know any of that stuff. If it makes you feel bad, don't allow that trigger to happen. It's having a conversation with somebody that you don't enjoy that's making you feel a bit tense. Or maybe it's on a subject that makes you feel frustrated or annoyed, like politics or what's going on in some world event or what's wrong with your life, or what's wrong with someone else's life. That's another trigger you can eliminate. You don't have to be in that conversation. Now this goes up. You can eliminate relationships with people that you know are destructive for you. And that could be an employee or your job, an employer. It could be a marriage. It could be a relationship. And you might say, I can't do that. I can't just end my marriage. Well, why not? I mean, I'm not saying you should, but the fact of the matter is, what's the only reason if you're in a toxic relationship or in a job you didn't like, or you had a part of your business or even your whole business that you didn't like that was causing you stress and frustration, what is the one reason why you wouldn't just say, I give up or walk away from it, I don't need it? The one reason is you're afraid. You're afraid of what might happen if you do, that something bad might happen. You might not find a better relationship. You might end up alone and lonely. You might not find a better job. You might not find another business opportunity. You might lose all your money without realizing that your creative brain is saying to you, look, I know what's best for you. I'm going to make all the right things happen. Just like it did for me. I remember when I had nothing and started off working in a retail business in the back office for a few hours a week just to try and get something going. And I walked into the store, into the front of the shop this day. There was a man standing there, and I recognized him, and he recognized me, and I hadn't seen him for 25 years. And he looked at me and said, Liam, hi. He said, what are you doing? What are you up to? Wow. I said, well, not a lot. And he said, there's an opportunity for a business to be set up near where I have my business. It'd be perfect for you. He'd known me from my earlier businesses. Now, I didn't have any money, but how did he show up in my life? How did that opportunity show up in my life? Because it wasn't very long before I was operating a new business that I set up with no money. I don't know where I do know where stuff came from, the money I needed, but it wasn't anything that I'd struggled to get, but it was all the right stuff. So if we know that our brain, it's biologically designed to make the best happen for you, and all you need to do is eliminate the triggers that are blocking it from doing its job, then why would you hang on to anything that think bad things were going to happen? Your brain is biologically designed to make sure it doesn't happen. It really is as simple as just saying, and this is what I do with my coaching, and I wish it was more complicated because then, people might want to think, well, I have to spend years of my services, but it really is just looking simply at these triggers and making the decision, I'm going to eliminate that from my life. And when people say it's difficult, it's simple, but anything new, it might be difficult. Changing the habits of a lifetime might be difficult. But if I came along to you and said, I want you to drink this glass of liquid, or you came along to me and said, drink this, and I'd say, well, what is it? And you say, well, it's hydrochloric acid. And I say, well, I'm not going to drink that. And you say, why not? And I say, well, I know what it's going to do to me. It's going to kill me, or certainly do a lot of damage. There's no good for me in it. And you would say, but it's not so bad, and a lot of people have written books about it's not so bad, and if you believe and if you change your beliefs and everything, you'll be fine. I said, look, I don't know what planet you're on, you don't know what you're talking about. And then you say, well, look, if you don't drink it, you're not going to have any friends left, you're going to live under a bridge, you're going to be homeless, you're going to starve. I'd still say, it doesn't matter the justification, I know what is going to happen to me biologically if I put that into my system. And it's the same with these triggers. When you come to this understanding, doesn't matter the justification. Okay, I've been in this job for 20 years. I don't know what else to do. Of course you don't know what else to do because you're stuck in the wrong part of your brain. That's why you don't know what else to do. So whatever the justification, and sometimes it's more difficult than others, but people I've worked through in this, where they take this leap of understanding and start to use their creative brain, they contact me later and they say, a few months later, say, Now, Liam, you're not going to believe what's happened to me. And I've given up trying to believe and expect what's going to happen to people, including myself.
Right.
Because you're not supposed to know. You're supposed to just enjoy this moment. That's it.
That's really powerful. And I want to thank you for giving everyone listening the opportunity to send you an email. Say that email one more time. And I also want to call out, you got a great video on your website, which is liamnaden.com. When I watched that video a little earlier today, I was like, oh, that's exactly the kind of thing I love to talk about, because it is actionable. Is things that people can do right now if they allow themselves a deeper understanding of how they themselves work. So I want to thank you for offering that to everyone. But tell us a little bit more about how we can connect with you outside of the course you have.
My website, liamnaden.com, that's where a lot of this information is, and explanations and videos, and the course, which is course@liamnaden.com with the word rebellion in the subject. That really just crystallizes one way to approach this. The thing that frustrated me was all of these things that I used to try so hard to make work. Somebody said to me, write down your goals and read it, put it on a card and read it 5 times a day. I read it 100 times a day. I listened to all of these, mind-changing subliminal recordings. I did all that stuff really, really hard. But for me, it didn't work. And I realized why it didn't work. I wasn't operating in a natural way. I wasn't just allowing my biology to run my life. But if you think about cutting your finger, if you cut your finger, you don't worry about whether it's going to heal. You don't stare at it and visualize it healed and meditate on it and recite all these affirmations. You just know the natural processes, that everything in your natural intelligence is going to get to work and it's going to heal your finger, and you just need to allow it the right conditions to be healed. We know that. So we trust, if you like, that our body is going to make us the best that we can and heal us for small things, but we don't realize that it's also in control of everything in our life, of our actual biological state, because it wants us to live as long as possible. And the only way we can live as long as possible is by being the best that we can be. So that's what it's there to do.
That's such a great way to wrap all of this up, because it crystallizes the message. And I want to thank you so much for coming on today and exposing us to this information, this way of thinking, because I'd never really thought of the parts of the brain. I knew, I guess, the textbook versions of those, but not in this way that you've explained it, on how one limits access to the one that's the most important. And sometimes we're fooled into thinking that the stress and all this problem solving is going to pay off, when in fact we need to just kind of let go and let things happen as they should, just like the example of the cut that you just gave. So thank you so much for coming on, Liam, and I know that everyone's going to get a ton of value out of this conversation.
Thanks so much, James. It's been an honor to be here.
Thanks for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this content and are thinking about ways to share your story or even get more joy out of your life, I have a free ebook that I'd love to share with you. It's called Plotting Your Joyful Rebellion, and I designed it to be a 5-step field guide full of guerrilla warfare tactics to help prepare you to overthrow any of the parts of your life you feel the call to rebel against. Go to ajoyfulrebellion.com and click on the link right there at the top to claim your free copy of the book. Again, that's ajoyfulrebellion.com, or simply hit the link at the top of the show notes. What sort of rebellion are you plotting right now? I'd love to hear about it. Connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or through the website at ajoyfulrebellion.com. Thanks again for listening today, and be sure to stop by next week for another episode full of joyful rebellion.